the J&J Spratt Funeral Home, EXP Realty, Forward RX, Keystone Wellness, Patriot Home Care, Frank Hacko, Fisher's New Brighton Foodland, Alterations by Florina, Eye Care on 3rd, Gosnell's Auto Repair, Craig's Hardware, Carver Construction, D&G Rentals, and Beaver County Radio.
Tune in to Driving in the Fast Lane with Frank Sparks on 99.3 FM and 1230 WBVP, Monday through Friday from 6:30 to 9 a.m. Frank will talk about what's happening in the news, locally, regionally, and nationally. There's also music to get you started for the day, and Curtis Walsh will have the news. The show is brought to you by Patriot Home Care, so set your radio dial to 99.3 FM and 1230 WBVP. We're streamed live on BeaverCountyRadio.com, so you can listen every morning on Beaver County Radio. Freedom United Federal Credit Union proudly presents the return of Beaver County's #1 buy, sell, and trade show, Yankee Trader. The all-new Yankee Trader is back, and popular show host Diane Brocious will return to host every Saturday morning from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on Beaver County Radio. So get ready to buy, sell, and trade every Saturday, right here on Beaver County Radio. The Yankee Trader Show is brought to you by your friends at Freedom United Federal Credit Union in Rochester. You're listening to 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, in addition to 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls. Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romai to introduce today's program.
It is the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romai. We do this once a week. We come in here and we talk about interesting people around the area. We talk about businesses, successful businesses, startup businesses. We're here to promote what happens around our area. And I'm excited to have this guest today, and I think you will as well. I've encouraged him to try and write a book about his experiences. He's been in the police field for almost 50 years now. Much of that spent in the district attorney's office. He has been the lead detective. He's now retired, but boy, does he have stories to tell. His name is Andy GALL, and Andy, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks for coming in. So soft-spoken, but it's been years since we've talked. I can remember back in the 80s talking to you about some of the different things going on around the county. And so now you're retired. You got a lot of time on your hands. Around these parts, they kind of make fun of me because I keep coming back after I retired. Do you ever get that itch?
I do get that itch. I've got 4 kids. That makes 8 grandkids, and I spend a lot of time hauling them one place to another. Yeah. But I can't help stick my nose into other people's business.
That's the role of a grandparent, isn't it?
Yes.
You just got to take the grandkids around. But it's a joy. It's something that when you're working every day, you miss out on that stuff.
And that's very true. And I will tell you that I've been really enjoying being able to connect with them a little more than I used to be able to.
So you went to Point Park University?
I started out, because when I started as a policeman back in the 70s, you didn't have to have any kind of education, and it was not even encouraged necessarily. Yeah. But you can't get to be a policeman at that time till you're 21. My mother told me, go to community college. They have a police program up there. I did 2 years and got
associate's degree.
My associate's degree there. They even named me as at their 40th anniversary. I was one of the top 40 graduates from CCBC.
Wow, congratulations!
I got a job and actually made something of myself. I think so.
And then you went on to Point Park.
And then I went on later on. Like I said, I have 4 kids. My older kids were hitting college age, and I'm telling them, we got to figure out what you're going to do. And my daughter says to me, you're doing fine. The only thing you did was went to CCBC. And I said, well, doesn't say the only thing. And
Yeah,
she took
right.
it, and actually she took the first 2 years at CCBC.
Yeah.
Transferred that up to Erie, up to Gannon, and she's a physician's assistant now. And they all make more money than Dad was making before he left, I think.
But she kind of challenged you then, huh?
She did,
Yeah.
and when the number two, who was even harder, is my son and namesake, Andrew, he challenged me with the same thing. He ended up going to Penn State. The deal was they had to not only go and graduate, they had to get good grades. I ended up, because the county is very good, if you're an employee there, and as long as you keep the grades up, you can, they'll pay for your college.
Okay.
And so I started doing Saturdays at the Point Park. A lot of law enforcement people have done that. Worked out really well for me. I graduated summa cum laude. Didn't even know what it meant. When I went down to get my graduation papers, the young ladies working in the office looking at me like, how'd you even get here?
Yeah.
So I finally did that.
Yeah, and it's different being a non-traditional student when you're going to college.
Yeah, I went, well, the non-traditional, that's nicer. They called me an adult learner. And
He's the old guy in the class, right?
it was fun. It was funny because our Saturday class, we were originally in the Point Park building.
Yeah.
And would get on the elevator, and kids were coming down, and then some of them would see a bunch of people that looked like cops.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even get on the elevator with us. And then, but after we'd get down there, have coffee, and talk
Yeah.
to a couple, we ended up making friends with some of these guys.
Yeah.
They were going to be entertainers or dancers and stuff
Okay.
like that. But none of them, we didn't convince any of them to go in law enforcement.
Back in the day, they would have referred to them as narcs. You're too close to the cops, and you're feeding them information, right?
Right.
You came from Ambridge, went to Ambridge High School?
I went to Ambridge High School, graduated in '72. Then I lived in Baden most of my life.
Yeah.
I'm still there now.
Yeah, phenomenal. And you got involved in law enforcement. Why? Besides your mother saying that, they have classes at CCBC, get a degree. What was your interest in law enforcement?
Well, you got to remember, too, now, I'm growing up during the 60s, and not anybody else was.
You weren't one of those long-haired, freaky people.
I did have a little bit
did
of
you?
long hair. Matter of fact, even when I got hired in Monaca, I used to try to hide it behind my ears.
Oh, okay.
And the chief of police at that time was none too happy about that. And
Was that Rocky?
That was Rocky Conti. And Rock would send me
Yeah.
to the barber, which was only 2 doors up from the
Yeah.
police station. And literally before I could go to work that day.
So
And so
get a trim on those
get a
ears.
trim.
Huh? Was that Harper's barbershop down there?
No, the Harper's down the other
Yeah.
end. This was an older gentleman. I wish I could remember his name. He was actually a federal firearms guy. You'd be in there getting a haircut, and
Yeah.
he'd be selling a gun or transferring a gun
Yeah.
between 2 people at the same time, halfway through my haircut.
Yeah. And so you're a beat cop in Monaca, right? So you're writing traffic citations, things
Not
like
too
that.
many of them, which Rocky also complained about.
So investigations, when did you roll into investigations? What captured your attention there?
Well, actually, and that's why I went into police work. I lived across the street from Sam McKee, who was the Baden police chief and was kind of legendary in that time frame. And I'd get down and talk to him. He always had time, would talk to you, encourage you. And I'd see the police car pull up in front of his house, because if anything happened in Baden, they came. I don't think Sam ever had regular clothes, because I'd see him at 10 o'clock at night
Still
in his
wearing
uniform sitting on the porch.
Yeah.
So that was one. And I would watch these old film noir movies where
Robert Mitchum.
Robert Mitchum, Dana Andrews, and where the cop was always flawed, and he was usually the lieutenant detective, and he ended up solving the thing in the end. Well, I figured I was going to be flawed, and so maybe I could fit into that job.
Yeah. Interesting. So it wasn't Mayberry.
No, it certainly wasn't Mayberry.
No Andy Taylors around.
No, I joke about that, these towns we really think are Mayberry, and how long I've been doing this, it's really not Mayberry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wish it was.
That's what so many people think. You're a cop in a small town, you're a police officer in a small town, not much crime going on there. But times have really changed. I don't know, maybe you dealt with more drunks back in the 70s and 80s, but so many drugs and guns and violence in our communities. It's not just check in and doze off, in your cruiser somewhere. Where this is what the impression a lot of people have about local police officers.
We had that. That was when I started. Now you got to remember, this is almost 50 years ago. I only weighed 130 pounds, and I was 6'1", and so the mills were working. And like you said, you had problems with drunks. Well, the 4 to 12 guys would stop after, have a couple of beers.
Right.
We used to have bar fights. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, because the midnight shift would go and do that. And but it was different back then. One of the things I'm proud about is I never have missed a day's work for an on-the-job injury. I was never hurt. I'll tell you, I was bounced around more than once, but I was never hurt seriously enough to miss work for an injury like that. We had that domestics at that time, back in those days, you had domestics, but you didn't arrest them. And I have a terrible, one of the first ones I went on, this couple had gone out for their anniversary, had a few too many drinks, got in an argument. He takes the wedding picture, busts it over her head. The neighbor calls because she's screaming. When I got there, and I was there with Sergeant Tippy Tyler, who was another famous guy from Monaca. We get there. First off, we're not arresting the husband. Second off, I'm very carefully removing the glass. These weren't even plastic. These were glass. I'm removing the glass from the frame so it doesn't cut when we try to take it off, and I'm taking the thing apart. Meantime, Sergeant Tyler is kind of manhandling this guy into the kitchen to get him out of the way. And ultimately, the result was we called his brother. His brother come pick him up, and he took him for the rest of the night.
Oh, geez.
And that was their anniversary.
Yeah, happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah, you didn't arrest people for that then. It was
I thought, oftentimes I've heard that domestic violence cases are the worst, because I thought you were going to go where the guy was taking the husband into another room, and you're picking the glass out of her hair and off of the frame and everything like that. And then she's going to sympathize with the husband and say, oh, don't hurt him. No, don't arrest, don't take him away. And then you guys get in the middle of it. I just read of a case in Pittsburgh where a police officer got his finger amputated in a domestic case because they went and the woman who called in the first place slammed the door on the officers, and it amputated his finger at the knuckle. It's crazy.
It is crazy, and I've been in that situation.
They turn against you.
They do, because that's their husband. They love them.
Yeah.
And even though they're having the worst day of their life right now, we have had that. And the people like Rocky and Tippy Tyler, they taught me originally. They says, don't think that this lady's going to be your victim in that, and sometimes they certainly are, and they need your help, and that works out fine. But they says always keep your eye and always keep them apart. And sometimes, and we've had it where I've had to restrain the woman while my partner's taking the guy to the police car.
Yeah.
And and you're trying, and they said part of it is the guy sometimes going to lose his job. They don't want him to miss a couple days' work. He's going to be madder yet when he gets back, and it's a tough situation. I've worked, once we did, in the Women's Center of Beaver County, not to put plugs in for people, but they
it's
are
a great
wonderful,
organization.
wonderful people. And I've worked closely with them over the years, made good friends with them, because they do try to help the police get the victim to understand it's just going to get worse. And they were pretty brand new when I started. They were in a little building in Rochester, and now they got a nice facility. They do a great job reaching out to those people. And
times have changed so much. Back in the 70s and perhaps even into the early 80s, domestic abuse was more or less acceptable in our society. Men were the breadwinners. They had a hard day at work. They come home, they're frustrated. You didn't make the meal right, then you get slapped around. That was acceptable behavior.
Correct. And it's not acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that things have changed. When I started, that was, even though the officers I worked with didn't consider it acceptable behavior, the criminal justice system did.
Yeah.
And so you basically did not arrest them unless the other person went to the hospital. But meantime, the number of homicides I've worked over the years that are domestic related is terrible, and you see what happens.
The end result of it.
The end result when it finally gets to that point.
Our guest is Andy GALL. He has been in law enforcement for almost 50 years. He's retired now from the district attorney's office. He was the chief detective. We're going to talk about some cold case files also happening in Beaver County when we continue on the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network.
Oh my goodness, Amy, it's so good to see you.
Jennifer, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Is your mom doing any better?
Thank you for asking. I don't know if I can answer without being emotional. I'm sorry. I'm just tired and worried. I can't always be there for her, and it's so stressful.
I really understand. That's how I was with my dad. I'd recommend calling St. Barnabas. We did. We started with just having them come in for home care. He was so excited to see them show up. And when he needed more, we were able to move him in at Beaver Meadows, where he still has his own home-like space and excellent care.
Thanks for telling me that. I don't even know how to start, but I have to do something.
Oh, you can just give St. Barnabas a call. They have directors that can explain how it all works. Trust me, you'll feel so much better, and so will your mom.
I'm so glad I ran into you.
Visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com or call 724-443-0700 for care apart from the ordinary.
Yeah. Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romai, and we're talking with Andy GALL, Chief of Detectives from the Beaver County District Attorney's Office. He's retired now, but boy, does he have stories to tell. It's not Otis in the drunk tank, as you see on Andy Griffin's show. There are a lot of stories in the Naked City and in Beaver County where you think, hey, it's pretty nice here. There's not a lot of crime that goes on here. But when you talk with the detectives and the police officers, you find a whole lot more. And people would be disappointed, Andy, if I didn't roll right into some cold cases. Now, I saw you on Netflix. You've been doing this cold case stuff for a long time. Tell us the roots of cold case files in Beaver County.
Well, the cold cases, every department kept their own. And back, we started digging around in them. I ended up becoming the cold case keeper for the county for a while. Rochester had a cold case, and they had the file, and so I would go there, make photocopies of the whole thing with the approval of the police chiefs, and make a binder so that we had that in case we would get a phone call on it. Plus, we use Crime Solvers. I'm part of Crime Solvers, have been for a number of years. Crime Solvers puts rewards out for the cold cases. We get the Crime Solvers tip. We can go to that book and take a quick look to see if this is legitimate or not. So there are cold cases that we have, or I left at the DA's office, that go clear back to 1956. Wow. That was a case that happened in industry. Patty Patton was a little girl found dead down there. That's never been solved. But I will tell you that myself, the Beaver Police Department, which covers industry now, Detective DeGory, and the State Police, Trooper Josh Thomas, we knew that the one suspect was on his last few days. We appeared at his trailer, and over the protest of his family, but he was willing to at least talk. We talked to him because we explained that he's going to be meeting his maker and maybe he wanted, and he just did not come across. Now that could be because he was innocent.
Yeah.
But we took that shot.
Yeah.
So we keep them, we look at them, we pay attention to them, we track them.
1956, 2024, a lot has changed.
Yes.
DNA evidence. And you can go back now if you have evidence from those times that there was no way of figuring it out. Now, if the evidence was kept not pristine but in good condition, you can now get DNA off of a lot of that stuff.
We just did that, and we used crime solvers for that because we needed money to do these testing because we knew we're doing this new familial DNA.
People go onto Ancestry and those kind of things.
So what happens is in 1974, before I was a policeman by a year, a woman by the name of Annette Rose Tokars was murdered in Hopewell. And the state police, the county detectives, the Hopewell police were all working that case. They did an excellent job in the reports, getting suspects, putting everything down. And the state police initially kept all that evidence. When the state police keeps it, it's kept. You are good to go. And then ultimately they turned it over to the Hopewell police, who did the same. They kept it the same way that the state police had kept it. Our detectives looked at that evidence again under a alternate light source, found some things. Alternate light source didn't exist back in then. Looked at that stuff, sent it to the lab. There's DNA on the victim's clothing that would certainly be indicative of who the killer was. They ran that. We did it through the familial. As it turns out, one of the suspects actually is named in the police report. So when I retired, they were still working that case.
But his DNA came up through that lighting?
Yes, under that. And then the state police lab was able to get the DNA sample. We put it into familial DNA. We ran it into CODIS, which if this guy had been a serial killer, somebody caught, his would be in there.
Okay.
Like Ed Surratt's is in there now. But it didn't hit, so he didn't have his DNA profile in CODIS.
Is there one case that you were working on that frustrated you more than others that you just couldn't solve?
Every one of them frustrates me. There are a couple that I wished I would have been able to solve before the end of my career. One of them is the one you mentioned from
Cold Case.
From Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
The Severed Head.
The Severed Head. That's going to be the 10-year anniversary coming up this December.
Now that was found in Freedom, the head?
In Economy Borough.
Economy
on
Borough,
Mason
okay.
Road.
Okay. It was
Dorna
an old woman's head, right?
An older. Well, I don't want to say old woman because
Okay.
she's probably my age now. But an older woman's
Just a
head.
head.
It was embalmed. It's laying right off the side of the road. A kid was walking up the road and sees it off the side. He actually thought it was hunting season. He thought it was a gut pile. He goes over and peeks, and it's a head. And that started one of the weirdest investigations I've ever been involved in. It's been tested, I believe, four times for DNA. Different companies say, I guarantee we're going to be able to get your DNA out of there. But everybody's telling us that the embalming fluid ruins that DNA. They've tested teeth, skin, hair, bone. They've done it all. Well, now, thanks to the Unsolved Mysteries show, the different companies are actually working together to try to solve it for us. So we're excited about that.
And we all have theories. and it's probably another frustration for you in law enforcement. We all have theories. What happened there? What happened here? Was it just something that fell out of a hearse traveling to a morgue or something like that? How did her head how did she get decapitated, and how did it end up in freedom? Because she may not even have been from Beaver County.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the other weird thing I should mention is when we take her up for the pathologist to take a look at her, she has eye caps on, but when they take off the eye caps, instead of cotton put in there where her eyes had been, there were red rubber balls, like the red balls that you used to play jacks with when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And that makes no sense. We've been in touch. Unsolved Mysteries helped us get out to funeral directors and people all across the country, and that's just not something that's done. We've talked to funeral directors here who will look at the ball and think about it. You could just see the puzzled look on their face. It would work, but why would you do that when cotton's so much cheaper and easier to put in there?
Yeah.
So that's another strange part of the thing.
Maybe it's mob related. She saw something she shouldn't have, and so
maybe. I mean, we had all the theories and all the things. Yet I told Chief O'Brien, who I'm working with on that case. Matter of fact, I was in Economy Police Department yesterday. That's one of my hobbies now, is retired. I bother guys who, and so I go up there. He's very good about letting me volunteer and help follow up, because we get leads constantly from this now since it's been on the thing. And some of it's emails or phone calls, but so it's that one. Mm-hmm. It's Anna Rocknick, which happened in 2005 on Christmas Eve in Harmony Township, which, when we talk about the Mayberry thing, I mean, what nicer place than Harmony Township? And the Sarah Boehm case also drives me crazy.
Sarah Boehm, that's the headless.
No, Sarah Boehm is a young girl who was reported as a runaway in 1994 in Rochester Township. Disappears, doesn't come back. The detectives got involved. I got involved sideways because of something her father did in Beaver, and I was assisting the Beaver police, and he tells me about his daughter disappearing. So I go back to Rochester Township. We start looking at this. Ultimately, we find Sarah Boehm as a Jane Doe in Berlin Lake, Ohio, over in Portage County. They had a period of time, there were 4 dead bodies found up there. And she was one of them. And 2 of them were not related to her at all. The third one possibly could be related, because it was another runaway who was found. Sarah was actually in the same area but hadn't been found, and was found later that year by a hunter. But there was no identification on her. They didn't know who she was. It was basically skeletal remains. And so we've been trying to figure out how somebody from Rochester Township gets to Berlin Lake.
It's crazy. We're just about out of time, and there's so many stories. I would love to hear them all. One question, the Del Tondo case out of Hopewell, Aliquippa area. Do you think they'll ever figure that one out? Because it's still considered unsolved, right?
It is still considered unsolved. There's been no charges filed. Under Dave Lozier, this was looked at, and the attorneys felt that there was not enough evidence to file against a certain person. I know that the new district attorney had said that he is going to take a serious look at it too, but I don't know where that stands.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep on it, and we'll bring you back, because I know you have fascinating stories to tell, and they really should be in a book. I'd love to see the book about it.
As long as you keep coming back, I'll keep coming back.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Andy Gall, former chief of detectives in Beaver County, retired. What a life, what a history. Thank you so much for being here with all the hard work and doing what's right for people in Beaver County. Certainly has been a pleasure having you on. We'll get you on again for sure.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Andy Gall, our guest on Beaver County Radio, Crime Solvers. You're involved with Crime Solvers now. People can get information on that through their website?
They have a website. They have a Facebook, which is great. People who have that. You can make it your friend, and you'll pick up all kind of interesting things.
And they're celebrating their 40th anniversary.
We celebrate that this year.
Very good. All right. I'm Mike Romai. It's the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. We'll talk again next week.
Thank you for listening.